April 8, 1943, 7,000 feet above Caen, France. The thin air shimmered around Oberleutnant Ralph Hermaken's Fock, Wolf 1998-5, as he scanned the horizon through his crystal clear canopy. His oxygen mask couldn't hide the smirk spreading across his face. Far below, ungainly shapes crawled upward toward his formation. Massive, lumbering silhouettes clawing at the sky. He laughed into his radio. Die Amerikaner haben Milch flaschen Gestik, flying milk bottles! To his eyes, the enemy aircraft, Republic P-47 Thunderbolts, looked like absurd contraptions. Their barrel, like fuselages, glinted in the sun, their propellers gigantic, their wings stubby. Compared to the lean Spitfires or the sleek Bf-109s, these newcomers seemed like jokes. Yet, what none of the German pilots knew was that they were witnessing the arrival of a machine that would change the air war forever. Below them, 16 P-47s of the 4th Fighter Group fought for altitude, their 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R800 double Wasp engines roaring under the strain. The Thunderbolt was heavy, 7 tons of metal and firepower, but beneath its awkward shape lay the blueprint of aerial dominance. Within 18 months, those same milk bottles would be the most feared killers in the skies over Europe. Each Thunderbolt carried 8 50 caliber Browning machine guns, 3 400 rounds total, capable of unleashing 6,000 rounds a minute. They could slice a Messerschmitt in half in 2 seconds. That morning, Major Donald Blakesley, commander of the 335th Fighter Squadron, spotted Hermaken's formation positioning for attack. A veteran of the RAF's Eagle Squadron, Blakesley had already mastered what few Americans yet understood. The P-47 wasn't a dogfighter. It was a brawler. Its survival depended on new tactics, new instincts, and the will to fight differently. The German Luftwaffe prided itself on its light, agile interceptors, machines built for quick turns and swift climbs. But the Americans had taken a different path: mass, altitude, and endurance. The Thunderbolt was built to hit hard, survive punishment, and fight where no other aircraft could breathe. The Thunderbolt was born from panic. In June 1940, as German forces stormed across France, the U.S. Army Air Corps demanded an interceptor that could meet the Luftwaffe's best fighters. Republic Aviation's chief designer, Alexander Kartveli, delivered something no one expected. It will be a dinosaur, he warned, but a dinosaur with good proportions. The XP-47B first flew on May 6, 1941, and shocked everyone. At nearly 10,000 pounds empty, it was enormous. Test pilots joked it looked more like a bomber than a fighter. But when the throttles opened, the joke ended. The R-2800 engine and turbo supercharger hurled it into the sky, maintaining full power even above 27,000 feet, an altitude where German engines suffocated. Yet, the P-47 was not an easy machine. During early training, Major Hubert Hub Zenk of the 56th Fighter Group called it Groot. Between September 1942 and January 1943, his unit lost 18 pilots and 41 aircraft in training accidents. It ground looped on landing, torque rolled on takeoff, and dived so fast that pilots discovered the terror of compressibility. Control surfaces freezing as shock waves formed on the wings. But those who mastered it loved it. Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson of Oklahoma recalled, "It was like strapping yourself to a locomotive. You didn't fly it, you aimed it." April and May 1943 brought the P-47's first taste of combat and humiliation. German pilots tore through them. Fock Wolfs outturned them, Messerschmitts outclimbed them, and Luftwaffe confidence soared. Joseph Pips, Priller of JG-26, mocked in his report, "The new American fighter flies like a pregnant cow. It's meat for the slaughter." In the first month, U.S. fighter groups lost 14 Thunderbolts, while claiming only 3 kills. British observers joked that the best evasive maneuver in a P-47 was to unstrap and run around the cockpit. But the Germans missed something. The pregnant cows refused to die. P-47s returned home riddled with holes that would have shredded a Spitfire. One came back with 21 cannon hits and over 100 machine gun strikes and still landed. Its air, Cooled radial engine shrugged off damage that would doom liquid-cooled German planes. And when those 8 Brownings fired, their targets disintegrated. The myth of the indestructible Thunderbolt began on June 26, 1943, over Lille, France. The legend of Robert S. Johnson. Second Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson of the 61st Fighter Squadron flew near the rear of a bomber escort formation when 16 Foch Wolf 190s from JG-26, led by Wilhelm Ferdinand Gallon, dove from the sun. Within seconds, Johnson's aircraft was hit. 20 mm shells ripped through it. The canopy shattered, hydraulic fluid sprayed everywhere, and fire erupted. Shrapnel tore into Johnson's nose and leg. Desperate to bail out, he found the canopy jammed, welded shut by a cannon blast. He was trapped inside a dying airplane at 27,000 feet. Then came the impossible. Despite its ruined engine and shredded fuselage, the Thunderbolt refused to fall. Johnson managed to level it, heading for England, until a lone Foch Wolf 190 found him. The German pilot fired everything, his cannons, his machine guns, until his ammunition was gone. Johnson's aircraft was now a flying wreck, yet it still flew. The German pulled alongside, stared at the unkillable machine, saluted in disbelief, and broke off. Johnson's P-47 landed safely in England with over 200 bullet holes. Mechanics stopped counting. It was a miracle of steel engineering and courage. German intelligence didn't believe the reports, but eyewitness accounts from both sides confirmed the truth. The Thunderbolt could take everything the Luftwaffe had and still come home. By July 1943, the Americans had learned how to fight with their new monster. Hubzank laid down the new rules. Don't turn with them. Don't climb with them. Use your weight, your dive, and your guns. The Thunderbolt was invincible in a dive. From 30,000 feet, it could reach 550 miles. No German aircraft could catch it. Pilots like Walker, Bud, Mahurin developed the now famous boom and zoom tactic: dive, strike, and climb away before the enemy could react. When the Brownings opened up, Luftwaffe pilots described it as flying into a wall of lead. Those caught in the crossfire didn't just fall, they'd exploded. The new tactics proved devastating during the August 17, 1943 raids on Schweinfurt and Regensburg, the deepest penetration into Germany so far. Major David Schilling led the 62nd Fighter Squadron against a formation of heavily armed twin-engine Bf-110s. Eyewitnesses described the carnage. The P-47s dove from 28,000 feet like thunderbolts from heaven. At convergence range, 300 yards, all 8 Brownings focused into a 6-foot kill zone, unleashing 100 half-inch projectiles per second. German aircraft didn't just go down, they vaporized. Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gebreski would later sum it up: when you hit them with all 8, they don't go down, they explode. By September 1943, the Luftwaffe realized they faced something new. The P-47's power increased with altitude, while their engines suffocated. The turbo-supercharged R-2800 delivered full performance above 30,000 feet where the air was thin as glass. On October 8, 1943, one of Germany's top aces, Hans Philipp, with 2 out of 6 victories, met that truth head-on. Leading his Fa-190s at 28,000 feet, Philipp's engines gasped. Robert Johnson's Thunderbolts dove from 32,000 feet, firing at point-blank range. Philipp's aircraft exploded midair. When news reached Luftwaffe headquarters, panic followed. If Heinz Philipp could die like that, no one was safe. The German investigation concluded the Thunderbolt could outclimb, outdive, and outlast anything they had above 25,000 feet. It could even survive 3 times more battle damage than their fighters. The laughter was gone. The milk bottle had become a juggernaut. By early 1944, a new version arrived, the P-47D-22. Fitted with a massive Hamilton standard paddle blade propeller, it transformed the aircraft's performance. Climb rate jumped from 200 to 3,000 feet per minute. Acceleration improved dramatically. Veteran German ace Heinz Nock wrote in his diary, after encountering the new P-47s near Hanover, "These are not the same machines we laughed at last year. They climb with us and kill us." Even the sound changed. The new propeller tips approached supersonic speed. producing a deep, menacing rumble. German troops called it Donnerschlag, thunderclap. They could hear it long before the aircraft appeared. By March 1944, Thunderbolts with drop tanks could escort bombers deep into Germany, over 1,000 miles. The Luftwaffe's last advantage, range, was gone. Major Gunther Rall, one of Germany's greatest aces, described their fury and fear. They came down like an avalanche. Their guns were not bursts, but streams of fire. Getting caught in that stream meant instant death. Winter 1943 had turned Europe into a graveyard of wrecked planes. The Luftwaffe, bled white by endless defense, now faced a monster that refused to die. Every new P-47D rolling off Republic's assembly lines carried more fuel, heavier guns, and smarter pilots. The 8th Air Force called them Jugs. A nickname that stuck because they looked like squat milk jugs, but now it meant something else: Juggernaut. In March 1944, 15-year-old German civilians in Hanover looked up to see hundreds of silver thunderbolts roaring overhead. The sound rolled across the sky like artillery. What once signaled German superiority now marked their downfall. Hub-Zenke's 56th Fighter Group led the charge. By spring, Zenke's Wolf Pack had destroyed over 500 enemy aircraft, becoming the most successful American fighter group in Europe. Their emblem, a snarling wolf, symbolized the transformation of the U.S. air war: fast, organized, merciless. Zenke drilled his pilots relentlessly. You don't win by turning tighter. You win by hitting harder. Dive, shoot, and climb. If you stay to dance, you die. The Germans learned that lesson the hard way. On April 11, 1944, the Wolfpack shot down 95 enemy fighters in a single day. The Thunderbolt's only weakness had been range. Deep strikes into Germany, Regensburg, Schweinfurt, Leipzig often left B-17s without escort at the most dangerous points. But in early 1944, Republic solved it. New P-47Ds carried 150 and 200-gallon drop tanks, extending their reach to nearly 1,000 miles. Suddenly, the Jugs were everywhere. Berlin, Magdeburg, and beyond. When the 56 reached the German capital, radio chatter filled with disbelief. Wolfpack to base. Berlin in sight. It was the first time the American fighter force had seen the heart of the Reich. German radar operators screamed warnings, and Me-109 scrambled from every airfield. But the Luftwaffe's climb performance was poor above 30,000 feet, and the Thunderbolts ruled that thin blue world. They dove like meteors, firing 50 calibers that turned aluminum into confetti. By dusk, Berlin's western outskirts were littered with burning aircraft. That same month, Republic unveiled the P-47M, A2 800-horsepower monster capable of 470 MOF, designed to chase Germany's new miracle weapons, the V-1 buzz bombs and jet-powered Me-262s. June 6, 1944. Dawn broke over the Normandy coast. The sky was filled with more than 13,000 Allied aircraft. Among them, hundreds of P-47 Thunderbolts bearing black and white invasion stripes thundered across the channel at 50 feet above the waves. Their mission: clear the beaches, smash German fortifications, and protect the landing forces from counterattack. Each Jug now carried 1,000 pounds of bombs or rockets, a flying artillery piece. When the first wave reached Omaha, smoke and tracer fire covered the sand. Thunderbolts dove through flak, their engines screaming. At 8:15 a.m., Captain Charles Charlie Moore of the 362nd Fighter Group saw German Panzer EVs rolling toward the shore. He called out, "I've got tanks, let's plow 'em." He dived from 4,000 feet, released two 500-pounders, and pulled hard. The bombs landed squarely on the lead tanks. Two fireballs rose, followed by cheers from soldiers pinned on the beach. All that day, Thunderbolts flew low over Normandy, dropping ordnance, strafing convoys, cutting rail lines, and burning supply depots. The roar of the R-2000 became the soundtrack of liberation. By sunset, P-47 pilots had flown 700 sorties in support of the invasion. They destroyed hundreds of vehicles and gun positions, losing fewer than 25 planes, proof that the Jug could take punishment unmatched by any other fighter. After D-Day, the Jug transformed again, from high-altitude escort to low-level avenger. In France's narrow hedgerows, every German truck, tank or train became prey. The P-47's 50 shredded convoys, its bombs split bridges in half, its rockets punched through armor like knives through tin. Pilots joked that if it moved, they'd strafe it. If it stopped moving, they'd bomb it again. In July 1944, during Operation Cobra, Allied forces broke out of Normandy. Thunderbolts flew 12,000 sorties in 10 days, annihilating German resistance. General Omar Bradley later said, "The P-47 was the most destructive weapon in our arsenal next to artillery." German survivors told stories of gray devils that struck without warning. One soldier near Mortain wrote in his diary, "They come screaming from the sun. You see a flash and then your world explodes." The Luftwaffe tried to respond, but by mid-1944, fuel shortages and Allied bombing had crippled them. Thunderbolts roamed the sky virtually unchallenged. By late 1944, the Luftwaffe was a ghost of its former power. The few Mi-109s and F-190s that still rose were met by veteran P-47 pilots with hundreds of missions behind them. On November 26, 1944, Gabi Gabreski scored his 28th victory, tying Eddie Rickenbacker's World War I record. His logbook read simply, "Target destroyed, engine exploded." When Gabreski finally landed after a strafing mission in July 1944, he'd already become America's top ace in Europe. Hubzank II was forced down that fall, captured after parachuting into Germany. When interrogated, his captors demanded to know how the Thunderbolt could outclimb their interceptors. Zank smiled. "Maybe it's not the machine, it's the man." By VE Day, the P-47 had claimed over 7,000 enemy aircraft destroyed in the air and more than 15,000 on the ground. It had dropped 132,000 tons of bombs, more than any other fighter in history. While Europe burned, another front beckoned. The Thunderbolt II P-47N was built for the Pacific, longer wings, bigger tanks to 800 miles of range. It arrived just in time for the push toward Japan. On Saipan, Guam, and Okinawa, P-47Ns escorted B-29 superfortresses and flattened Japanese garrisons. Their endurance stunned even veteran pilots, 6-hour missions over open ocean, returning with bullet holes and empty tanks. Major Tex Hill, a former Flying Tiger, flew the new model from Iwo Jima. He said, "The P-47 was the only plane I ever trusted to bring me home if the Pacific tried to kill me." Against the Zero, the Jug used its dive advantage again. Japanese fighters could turn tighter. But one burst from 8 Brownings ended the fight instantly. On May 25, 1945, Thunderbolts flying from Okinawa struck Kyushu, the first American fighters over Japan since the Doolittle raid. They destroyed 34 aircraft on the ground and returned untouched. By the time the atomic bombs fell, the P-47 had helped pave the road for victory on both sides of the world. Stories of its durability became legend. One Thunderbolt returned to base with a cylinder blown off its engine, another with a 6-foot section of its wing missing. Lieutenant George Bostwick's aircraft took a direct 8mm flak hit in the fuselage and still landed safely. Mechanics joked the only way to destroy a P-47 was to lose it in a bar fight. Pilots who flew both the P-51 and the P-47 admired the Mustang's grace but swore by the Jug's heart. It didn't need beauty, it had muscle and loyalty. When peace finally came, tens of thousands of Thunderbolts filled airfields across the world. Many were sold or scrapped, but others served on. France, Brazil, Mexico, Italy, and the new post-war air forces of Latin America. In Korea, early P-47 derivatives still strafed ground targets until jets took over. Even today, restored Jugs roar at air shows, their engines shaking the ground, a reminder of the age when speed, courage, and steel decided the fate of nations. Engineers who studied the P-47 after the war called it the perfect balance between offense and survival. Its turbo supercharger inspired generations of jet designers. Its rugged airframe defined what combat durability should mean. Robert S. Johnson, the man who survived 200 bullet holes, summed it up best years later. "She was a brute, but she loved you. You could feel it in the controls. You never felt safer in the sky than inside that big, roaring Jug." August 1945. The Pacific sky was quiet for the first time in years. On Iwo Jima's runway, a line of P-47Ns waited in silence, engines cooling in the humid air. Their fuselages were patched and pitted from months of war, their propellers chipped by coral dust. But they still gleamed like silver thunderbolts in the sun. A young ground crewman walked among them, touching the scorched metal. He turned to his sergeant and said softly, "They look tired." The sergeant shook his head. "Not tired, just waiting." And indeed they were, waiting for the next generation of pilots to hear the low, thunderous rumble that once shook continents. When historians later measured the impact of American air power, they found that one aircraft above all symbolized endurance, evolution, and overwhelming force. It wasn't the sleek Mustang or the nimble Spitfire. It was the barrel-chested, 8-gun, 2-horsepower beast that laughed at flak-defied gravity and thundered home riddled with holes yet unbroken. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, the juggernaut of the skies,